Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Pen is Mightier. It's been a really long time since the last one came out, so apologies in
Yes.
advance for the late arrival. With me today is my co-host Brandon. If you want to say hi.
Hey guys,
Yeah, he's here.
what is up?
And great. What are we doing?
I
um,
don't know.
and today we're going to be discussing the fan fiction that I read through last week, or actually it wasn't last week, it was 2 weeks ago. Terror Gold. It's a Chronicles of Narnia fan fiction. And it's very short, so I'm expecting this episode to be less than an hour, if even. Um, and I guess without further ado, we can just get right into it. I'm not going to
Yeah.
show up. I'm not going to put up the reading because I already posted a video with the reading. So if you want to go listen to the reading, and you want to go see the actual document, you can go over to the other video, which is on the same channel that this is going on to, but it's in the. There's a playlist called TPIM discussions, or not discussions, TPIM readings, and it's the only video under there. Um, but yeah, let's go. Let's do it. Chapter
Well,
one.
actually,
Oh, never mind.
yeah. Before we even kind of no problem. Before we even kind of get into the story, I think it'd be really good to just kind of refresh our minds as well
Oh,
as
that's right.
refresh
Yeah,
the
yeah. We have to do a summary.
audience's mind on kind of just what the story is about, but also like what the property it's from is about. Like, what is the Chronicles of Narnia?
I mean, I guess I can do a little bit of a recap on Chronicles of Narnia. I don't remember everything,
Me
but the
neither, because
basic
it's been
premise
so
is very
long since I
simple.
read the movie, or read the movies. Since
Ah,
I read the
yes.
books,
Since you've read the
since
movie.
I read, read the movie on Wikipedia. But it's also been a little while since I've read the books and watched the movies because I watched them when I was like really, really young. So yeah,
Yeah. Okay. I can kind of go over a quick overview. I think my mic is
right?
blasting a little bit. Let me do a little bit of tuning to the mic. Okay, so basically, Chronicles of Narnia is about these four children, the Pevensie children. All you need to know for this story is that one of them's named Peter, and another one is named Edmund. And actually, now that I think about it, they're all pretty much represented. Lucy, Peter, Edmund, and Lucy's sister.
You said them out of you said them out of
Susan.
order.
There it is.
It's Peter, Susan, then Edmund, then
Okay,
Lucy.
but I don't remember them in chronological order, and it doesn't really matter for the story, I don't think.
It doesn't matter for the story, but it matters for me. So
Oh, okay. Well, Brandon, I'm sorry. I apologize profusely. Anyway, um, Peter is they basically, so these four children, they find an enchanted wardrobe in their room.
mhm.
They walk in, and it's a whole new world in there, and it's called Narnia, and they become like, they save Narnia basically from this evil that they stumble on, um, and then through that they become very high officials like like royalty in Narnia.
Royalty. So
Um,
kings and queens. And
yeah.
actually, I think that they were born royalty, and that they like escaped when they were like really, really young. So they didn't obviously remember being from this land or from this world or whatever.
Is that really
And
the
so,
premise? Wait, really?
yeah,
Oh my goodness, I did not
yeah.
know that. Okay, well,
Yeah,
yeah.
so they were born royalty. It's not like they became royalty through saving Narnia. Obviously, I think that they transitioned more into their roles, but like the whole point of the story was like they were destined to like rule this nation, and then it
Okay,
was
well,
overthrown
destined
by
doesn't
the
mean
White Witch.
yeah, destined doesn't mean they were actually born in Narnia though. I have a high doubt concerning the fact that they were actually born in Narnia. I think they just walked in and then it was like there was a prophecy by Aslan, which is this big tiger that talks, or a big lion that
Yeah,
talks. But yeah. So Brandon is just peddling nonsense. Don't listen to him. um, they
oh,
are actually humans. They are not Narnians. Um, but they just have a prophecy told about them. Anyway, that prophecy is not really necessary for this story that we're going to. Basically, this story from what I gather,
second. Yeah.
yeah, from what I gather, there was a movie that came out, the Prince Caspian movie, from the Chronicles of Narnia series, and in it, this author, which we haven't even mentioned, and I apologize if you're listening, author, but it's the oh my goodness, the fan fiction is Terror Gold, and the author's name is Lirenel. I don't know why I just like stuttered all over that. But he noticed some inconsistencies in the movie, probably because the movie was not very good. He noticed some inconsistencies in plot where basically in that movie there's a new character introduced, Prince Caspian, and Peter has as you remember, Peter is the oldest sibling. He has an unreasonable hatred toward Prince Caspian before they even met, or they meet and he hates him for some reason. Basically, this entire fan fiction is just explaining plot holes in a movie that was not very good to begin with.
Well, I wouldn't say it wasn't very good to begin with, because six or 7 year old me was like eating that shit up. Like, I love this movie. But
I mean, I didn't.
yeah.
Maybe we have different tastes. I thought maybe as a kid I liked it. I don't even remember it.
I think
That's the thing.
I don't really remember it. To be honest, I remember the first one more because I always used to watch that around like Christmas time.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
this one, like the second one, I don't even think.
No, I remember the first one very vividly. But the thing is,
Same.
if I don't remember the movie, then was it really that good?
That's true. Yeah, but did you even know that they came out with a third one? Like, there were 3
No,
of
that
these
is
movies.
just absolutely no one cares about that one. Like,
Yeah,
no
I
one
feel like
does.
that one flopped. Like, I don't feel like.
I feel like even
no
the
one talks
second
about
movie
the series.
flopped. No one talks about the Chronicles
Yeah.
of Narnia series anymore.
No one does. Yeah, which is crazy because I feel like it had a really big place in my childhood, but like I don't really remember much about the story. I don't really remember much about the story or like the movies or the books beyond like the first one. So.
To be fair, the books
Yeah.
were written pretty well. I remember really
Well,
liking
because
the
they were
books.
written like 50-something years ago. Or actually, no,
It was really good.
70-something years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever
Yeah.
read any of the actual like books, but
I
they were
have.
really. I read the Dawn Treader, and I really liked that one.
That was the third movie that they came out with, and apparently, I was doing a little bit of research before.
Oh wait, no, I remember that movie now.
Oh,
I remember it. I remember
you do?
the scene where it's a wraparound scene, and they're wrapping around the. It's like a panoramic, basically, but an inverse panoramic. Yeah, I'm just describing a wraparound of the Dawn Treader, and it's got the mouse that sits. The mouse is sitting in the front of the ship, and it's wrapping around. I remember that scene very well. It literally just like shot into my mind from the back of my mind. So
a little bit of like film trivia, I guess, is that like they actually were supposed to be coming out with the fourth one, because the third one came out in like 2010, and so they were actually supposed to be coming out with the fourth one in 2011. However, the licensing deal that they had
it
from
fell through?
like whoever the guy like who owned the series, like it fell through.
Whoever the
basically.
guy
So that's
is?
why.
You mean C.S. Lewis?
I don't remember. Yeah, C.S. Lewis. That's who.
That dude.
They made
yeah.
like a deal with like
That
his
loser.
corporation or his foundation or whatever. And so that deal ended up falling through, and that's why there weren't any movies produced past the third book, which was adapted into.
Well, yeah, didn't
the
he
third
die?
book. But yeah. Well, yeah, he died like years ago.
Yeah.
But,
So
I
the
mean,
deal
like,
wasn't
his
even with
foundation,
him.
like,
The deal was like with his family, right?
Exactly. But that deal fell through like
Oh, okay.
2011.
It's probably
so
because
that's
they
why
were absolutely butchering his series on TV.
Well, actually, speaking of that, the second book, like there is no rivalry mentioned between Peter and Castian.
That's true. There is a bunch of
So,
plot holes, but that comes with every
There
series.
is.
Like there's a
Yeah,
whole bunch
I
of
think
plot
that-
holes in Lord of the Rings too, and everyone loves Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, but I feel like that more so. Like I feel like the plot holes come from like these adaptations. Like we're gonna have a whole discussion about like how these book adaptations often end up changing so much of the original content that it's like mangled to the point of it's not even an adaptation anymore. It's just like I don't know. It's just not like it might as well be its own separate entity if that makes sense.
Well, I feel like for the really good series, all the plot holes can be kind of explained if you just dive deep enough and make your own explanation
That's
for
true.
them. So they're not really
Yeah.
plot holes, they're just not like they're untold truths. And I mean, you don't
Hmm.
really have to tell everything about your world to get the story across. So I'm like fine with the plot holes, but apparently this guy wasn't, Lirenel here. So he wrote this 3 chapter, very short fan
One
fiction
shot story. Yeah.
to and you know what? I'm gonna have discussions on whether this should even count as a story later on. But uh, yeah, we'll go chapter by chapter. It's 3 chapters. This
Mhm.
probably will only take 30 minutes or less. Um, so yeah, I think you can have the first chapter if you want. You can go through it and like do our thing.
Okay, so basically, this one is kind of picking up where, like, so forget, does this one come between the first and second movie? Because Caspian is already introduced as a character, so I'm going to assume that it is taking place after the second book. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
essentially,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so essentially, what happens is there's this whole kind of conflict that's kind of brewing, and Caspian is caught in the middle of it once again. And then you have the younger king, so Edmund. He kind of gets involved, and the main reason why is because, sorry, I'm like reading through it myself.
Yep, that's
I'm
pretty
reading
much
over
our
it in my
podcast, folks, where we literally
my
don't know anything about things we pretend to know things about.
my. I'm reading through like my notes and trying to
I'm literally reading
decipher
through the
how to
I'm reading
write.
through the chapter as well. You're not alone.
So basically,
We promise we've read this before.
yes, I read it like twice. I think the reason why it's like kind of hard to decipher exactly is because the chapter is kind of short and there really isn't that much. Like, there's a lot of dialogue, there isn't a lot of action,
Yeah.
but
Wow, you already touched on something I was going to touch on at the end, but yeah.
okay, yeah. But essentially, like, there's a lot of planning going on about this whole hiking. Basically, I believe what he wants to do is that, like, the hiking has not been thinking about what Aslan's will has been. And so King Edmund has been fighting for him to put Caspian on the throne. Because the whole point of the second book was that Caspian was trying to become the, like, ultimate king of Narnia. But, like, I forget if it's his father or uncle or something like that. But like the main antagonist of that second book was trying to like dethrone, like try to not kill Caspian, but like not try to get Caspian on the throne because he wanted to be
Yeah,
on the throne.
you said you
So
tried to say
yeah,
deep throne and you almost said deep throne and I was about to say please don't say
no,
that.
no, 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 no. But that's essentially kind of like what I'm picking up from the first chapter.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first chapter is kind of just like illustrating the fact that Caspian is like an outcast, or Peter hates Caspian apparently
Hmm.
only because he's a Telmarine, which is a
Hmm.
like a set of like a nation of people in the Narnia
And
series.
that's like the people that Caspian is from. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, sorry, I interrupted you. Is there anything else you want to say, or?
No, that's pretty much it. we can kind of just discuss like the chapter as a whole and like I guess what we think of the start of the story.
Okay, yeah, you go first then. You tell what you think of it. Like, what do you?
Okay. Um. So I definitely would say that this is a good story, like
Rip
in general,
audio.
like kind of just. Oh,
No,
can you hear
you
me?
kind of yeah you can we can hear you. It's just it's kind of like distorted. There was a little bit of distortion. It's fine.
Okay, can
Keep
you hear me
going.
now?
Yeah, yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. All right. Um. So what was the thing? Yes. So I think overall the story is pretty solid. Like I would say, it does a really good job of kind of implementing some creativity when it comes to coming up with some new and interesting ways of kind of telling this original piece. And I would say that this first chapter does a pretty decent job. I think, as I already touched on, that you said that you were going to say, Aaron, that I feel like the problem that this chapter has is that, or I guess maybe the story in general, there's a lot of dialogue, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot of action happening, which I feel like is a common thing that I've noticed in a lot of fan fiction. There's just a lot of dialogue, which is there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with dialogue, but
No,
like
it's
in
not
these
something wrong with
action
dialogue.
adventure
It's something wrong
stories,
with these authors. They literally just do not know how to write action.
I
Unless you're
think it's
that
just
one
like
person who wrote Burn Like Cold Iron, because that was pretty good. Some of those
yeah,
chapters are pretty good.
yeah. I just feel like if you're gonna write something that's action based, it needs to have action. Like you can't just be talking, stay around talking for like the entire time. And especially with a three chapters long story, like there isn't a lot of time to develop characters or to do any of that. And I think even talking about that stuff, like I feel like this is the type of story where you really need to have a background information about these characters, about the world that they live in, about pretty much everything to even get what's going on in this first chapter. Because like I had to go back and refresh myself because it's just been so long since I've really seen these people in this world. So I really had to kind of like refresh myself and like do some research to just like get a basis of understanding of what even the plot was or plot is.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of my initial thoughts of like this chapter, but also the story as a whole. If you want to add
Well,
anything.
I was gonna say something about how you should just like keep the story as a whole stuff for the later, so we have content for after we go through the chapters. But it's fine. My problem, my main problem with this first chapter is it is so boring. Um,
Yeah.
I I did not think it was possible to write something this boring. But I guess this dude did it. Uh,
Uh-huh.
I just it doesn't. It's just so much exposition hitting you at once.
It does.
First off, why does this dude decide? So basically, a little bit of a spoiler, I guess, but you can kind of tell from the first chapter. Nothing that is happening in the story happens in real time. He chose
No.
this time, this certain time to put the story in, and none of the actions happen in that time. So what happens is there's this stupid background conflict where it's like, oh, Caspian can't go into danger because he needs to be alive to take the throne, and
Hmm.
that never comes to fruition. There is never anything that happens about that. Again, I feel like I'm spoiling a lot of it, uh, but it's just first off the way he does his paragraphs are terrible. Where it's just like super thick paragraphs, um,
Yeah.
and they are not split up when they change ideas. I think one of the big things about Burn Like Cold Iron, also why we thought it was super, like it looked super long, was because the author would split the paragraphs up very evenly, where the paragraphs would contain one complete like thought or addition to the story, addition to the plot, and then she would split it when you needed to know something else. But
Hmm.
here it's just a paragraph of random jumbled exposition, and it even starts with exposition. It doesn't start with action, which already like when I was reading it, like recording myself reading it, I read the first sentence and inside my head I was like, oh my goodness, this is gonna be terrible because it was just like who starts a story with after the terrible mistake he had made, Caspian felt less ready than ever to be one of the leaders of the Narnians. I'm less ready than Caspian to freaking read the story, bro. Like it's how is that a hook? Like how does that make anyone interested in what you're gonna say? Um, I don't know. I literally only have. So this is the funny thing is this is one of the top rated fan fictions on fanfiction.net for Chronicles of Narnia. And I'm
Okay.
very disappointed with this first chapter because sure it sets stuff up, like it sets all the relationships up, um,
Yeah.
but it doesn't do it very in a way that progresses the story very much, um, in a way that actually shows that something is happening. Um,
Yeah.
you said something about how 3 chapters isn't enough to develop characters and stuff like that, and to a
Well, it's not enough time, is what I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's
It's
not
not
enough
enough
time.
time. I would I would semi disagree. I would say to an extent, yes, you can't like develop a character in the way you could if it was a novel, but 3 chapters that are this length are plenty to develop at least one character. Um, and this first chapter is a waste because it doesn't develop anyone's character. It just gives you like Caspian's head thoughts and just exposition. Uh,
Okay.
like this whole like perhaps that was why Caspian now watched the younger king during the Council of War. You can kind of like if you convey information fully enough, you can kind of just guess that, you know? Like all this stuff talking about why Edmund and why Caspian are doing the things that they do. You can just if you write them well enough, you can understand why they're doing the things that they're doing. Uh I don't know if that makes any sense. But
No,
it's
I
it's just like
understand.
a lot of nothing. It's a little bit of something, but in relation to the length of this first chapter, is a lot of nothing.
Yeah, I think it starts off on a bad foot, and I will say like chapter two has a lot more meat to it, and it's a little bit more gripping, but it's definitely a little kind of like kind of lackluster. But I would also say there's probably not that many Chronicles of Narnia fan fiction that's even out there.
There are
So like,
thousands. There are thousands.
really,
Yeah,
really,
you
how
would be
much is?
surprised.
Oh, 11,000. Oh, okay. Did
Yeah,
not know that.
yeah.
Did not know
That's
that.
why I was so
Um,
disappointed because I was hoping for something like really cool and gripping because it's only 3 chapters and it's the top. It's like one of the top stories. So I was like, this has to be good. But
yeah.
I guess I was wrong. Uh, I mean, I guess it's okay. It's mediocre. Like it's okay. Again, I feel like such a
It's
jerk for
definitely
saying that.
not bad.
Like I feel like
It's
such a
definitely
jerk
not
for
bad.
for
I would say
judging
that.
people's creative writing. But it's just
Mhm.
it doesn't get a point across, and like that's really what you should do with creative writing is A, you come up with an idea, and B, you get that idea across in in a gripping manner, um,
Mhm.
and in a way that makes you
Okay.
question that idea itself. Like something,
Right.
yeah, something like that. But this just is just telling like not even telling a story because there is no action happening, so it's just a snippet. And I will admit I myself am very guilty of doing this when I write. It's just I don't ever write anything that
Mhm.
happens. It's just like a snippet of a story. It feels like a snippet of a longer story. Um, so I'm not gonna
Gotcha.
like wail on him too much for it. I mean I can understand how this happened, but I also do not like it when this happens.
Mhm. All
Anyway,
right. Well,
I'll
do
go into chapter two.
you? Yeah.
Um, yeah. So chapter two. It seems that Caspian just runs off, right? Um, right? I see. Again, I don't even know because it starts off with Peter and Edmund, uh, you know, kind of disagreeing a little bit, and then
Right.
it really just goes into uh, Caspian's point of view. I don't really know how he transitions that. Uh, yeah. So
Is yeah.
so it seems that Caspian just leaves this council that they were having in the
Mhm.
first chapter.
Right.
And then he meets Lucy, right? Uh,
Mhm.
and then Lucy's just walking around like being a creep, in some forgotten wing of the castle, uh, that they're in right now, and Caspian's like, "Wow, she's being a creep. Let me go check up and see if she's okay." And it turns out she is reminiscing over something that happened to Peter a long time ago, or happened to them. That was kind of in the in between the first and second story, or first and second
Right.
movies. Um, so it seems that it's Peter, and he's killed a bunch of dudes, and I think they're starting the story. Actually, no, they literally just go through almost half of the story. That basically Peter, Edmund gets captured by these
Mhm.
people, uh, and then Edmund gets captured by these people, and Peter gets really, really mad because he loves Edmund, right? Because he's his brother. Um, and as the king of the High King of Narnia, he takes a whole bunch of people and goes to kill the people who took who took Edmund captive. Also, I don't really understand why they took Edmund. Is it just for money, or to send to send a message, kind of Joker-esque.
I think it was to send a message. To be honest.
Oh yeah, that's right, because they were fighting, right? No, it's the Raiders.
They were.
It was a raider. Yeah, so it's like a raiding party. So they're literally just trying to like steal food and money and stuff. And then they took Edmund captive as like leverage, and that didn't work very well for them because
It did not.
they literally just ended up angering the entirety of Narnia, like putting the entirety of Narnia against them, which I also don't understand. Like, why would you logically do that? Like, yes, I have stolen everyone's food and clothes and money, and now I'm going to kidnap the brother of the king because that surely won't end bad. Like, what? Anyway, that's basically what happens. Turns out these people, these raiders, are Telmarines, and they are Caspian's ancestors. And then that's basically why Peter hates all the Telmarines, is because they kidnapped his brother and tortured him and chopped off his fingers and stuff. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, I should note that this all happens by Lucy telling Caspian. So this is not happening in real time. This is not some sort of meta-realistic flashback. This is just dialogue. The entire story is dialogue.
It's dialogue, yeah.
And again, that means that since this is a flashback, that nothing really happens in the second chapter because it's just dialogue. You kind of get backstory. I mean, I guess that's what this entire story is about. It's just giving you some backstory. But I still would have liked it to happen in like an active sense. Like if it was happening, it should have happened in real time. Like it should have this time that he said this should have been at the time of this raider thing. Because then you can actually understand Peter and Edmund and Susan and Lucy so much better. Because Caspian literally does nothing. He walks around and asks people questions to start dialogue. It's like NPC hunting. Like have you ever played Skyrim? Where you have to like get some dudes to tell you
video games where you have to like go to the NPC and just like talk to them.
Yeah. So where the missions are like find out what's happening with this person, and you have to talk to this NPC to find out, and you just walk over and you just click through all their dialogue and you finish the mission. That's what this entire story feels like. But anyway, you can kind of deduce how I feel about this chapter just by how I described it.
Well, I can deduce how you feel about this entire story.
It's just nothing happens. Nothing happens, Like everything just kind of occurs. And you're just supposed to deal with it. And also, even if I say that, nothing occurs because it is just people talking. This is watching two NPCs talk to each other.
What I think it is that this whole story is really just kind of clearing up a plot hole or like something that I guess the writer felt like needed to be expanded upon. And so that's it. Like it's supposed to be kind of like a bonus scene that maybe got cut from like the original movie or whatever. And so he's just putting it in here now to kind of just, yeah.
But the point I'm making, Brandon, is that a scene is not a story. And therefore, this is not a story. Yeah.
Right. And I think that is kind of what is a little difficult. I mean, I think you touched on everything on what the chapter is about, so I'm not going to rehash that again. In terms of my thoughts, I definitely would agree. It's just a lot of dialogue. It's good dialogue. I think that, like, while we can sit here and be like, oh, like, it's just dialogue, like, it is good dialogue. Like, I feel like it is.
I have something to say about that as well.
Well, also, you might have a little bit of a different take because you like had to read it.
Yeah, so, it was very awkward. Like that is not how anyone would react to that. What was happening?
It was a little tedious, I would say, to read.
I could hear the Oblivion music in the back of my mind while I was reading this dialogue. Just like
I get where you're coming from, but I would still say like it still was an interesting piece to me.
I mean, it's interesting,
yeah, I kind of had fun with it. I think I really do like the story in general, and I think that's kind of like what prompted me to kind of just like push through it, even if it wasn't like the most interesting stuff. Because I do like, this like property. I do like like mythology and like fantasy and stuff like that. So it intrigued me, but yeah, I mean, it's really difficult, I think, to talk about the plot because the plot is so minimal, right? I feel like you touched on pretty much what happens. So
Yeah, so because like they introduce a conflict in the first chapter that's never resolved. It's never like
no.
talked about ever again.
Mm-mm.
And then this whole story is not happening in real time, so you cannot call it a story because this is not happening in real time. It's like those stupid story/movies where they're like, at the end he woke up, and it was all a dream.
Yeah.
Like how that doesn't
Yeah.
count as a story is the same reason why this doesn't count as a story because it's not happening in real life. It's not happening in real time. Um, yeah, I don't know. Again, I think the story would have been so much better if the time that it was set in, like the first and second chapters, was set when Edmund got captured. So like the first chapter starts with Peter's response to Edmund getting captured, you know, and then from there you can kind of build Peter's character, and then you can kind of like maybe go into the second chapter with like, you know, the actual meat of the story where he gets Edmund back. And then the nature of the page can help you understand the nature of Caspian because they're related. You know, that kind of stuff. That way
I agree. I think it needed to start off with the action because I think starting off with dialogue and then building to some action that then kind of gets resolved.
Yeah, it's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Why would you do that?
Yeah, it's kind of backwards. So, do we want to talk about chapter 3?
Do you have any thoughts on chapter 2? Is that it or?
That's pretty much it.
Okay,
for me,
we can move on to chapter 3 then. It's your chapter.
Okay, so he basically says here that Caspian is so okay. There were two moments that kind of caught me off guard. There was the first where Caspian is kind of just reflecting back on himself as a small child, and like he was watching like the other service children playing rope jump in the courtyard, chanting chants that he knew even as a little boy, that harkened back to these stories that his tutor used to tell him. And so he never really understood the song "How Many Does the Gold One Burn," which I guess is in reference to the title of Terror Gold. But essentially, like, the story goes like 2 kings, 2 crowns, silver and gold crowns. Lost silver stands strong. Silver of the right and wrong. Gold comes, terror gold. Riding forth, fierce and bold. Silver tarnish, silver desire. Burning west with golden fire. How many does gold one burn? 1, 2, 3, 4. And so in this chapter, like beyond that, is kind of just like it's just talking about like Caspian kind of just reflecting back on like his childhood experiences and I guess on the way that, you know, they were going to save Edmund, because the author includes this little line that says like, we all know that Edmund made it back safely and Peter doesn't go mad, and that the Telmarines almost all live happily ever after with the Narnians. So like there isn't really a lot of change that really happens. It's just kind of like again, kind of what I was talking about before. It's kind of just a scene to supplement into the movie to add a little bit more further context, but it's not really rewriting the movie altogether. So that's all I have to say on chapter.
And in a certain way, it's plagiarism, because they're not making their own unique thought. They are literally just adding to the movie, which is a copyright infringement. So,
in fairness, that is what fanfiction is. Like, a lot of the time,
a good fanfiction can be counted as its own idea sometimes, with like its own story and its own unique characters. But if the plot line is literally just an addition to the actual copyrighted plot line, then I feel like it's a little bit more on the side of plagiarism than uniqueness. Anyway, it's my own belief that all fanfiction is plagiarism, but it's fine.
Right. I think we have different viewpoints on that, because I do think that like overall fanfiction is designed like it's kind of like it falls under that creative properties law. Like technically, it's not like you're selling this work. And
I sure hope not. Feel really bad for anyone who pays money for this.
Yeah, it's not like you're selling this work or like putting it up for sale, and it's not like you're directly like trying to steal someone's
Yeah, I
ideas.
guess
If
it's not
anything, you're
copyright
trying to
infringement then.
expand upon like someone else's work.
Still doesn't change my
Off the
opinion
file.
about what kind of like writing it is, though. But it's fine.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I think that this story is a better. I mean, it's better than Dave's Divider.
Okay,
Let's
well,
be
literally, if I smashed my head onto the keyboard and gave myself a concussion, that would be better than Dave Stiditer, Pokemon trainer.
yeah,
All right. I
yeah.
literally
But
don't think we understood what was going on like 13 chapters in. We anyway. Sorry, don't ranting on
I'm
about that
flashing
story.
back to it.
Yeah,
I'm flashing back trying to remember
getting some
what the plot
PTSD
was.
flashbacks.
Yeah.
Nah.
But I mean, what I'm trying to say is that the story is definitely a lot better than something like that. It's definitely better than. It's not better than Burn Like Cold
No,
Iron. by
don't
any
even
means,
don't even
but,
try
like,
and put them in the same league. Burn Like Cold Iron was actually decent.
yeah, I think that this is still decent, but I think it just needed a little bit more. Even if that meant more chapters, it needed more.
You know how much more character fleshing went into, like character thought went into Burn Like Cold Iron? Even if some of the ideas presented were a bit ridiculous, like
Right.
like flying the helicopter, that was ridiculous. I
Mhm.
still assert that that was ridiculous. Um, you know, like at least even with those ridiculous items, at least there was like some level of thought and care put into these characters, and you could actually feel them living and breathing, and not just hello there. Let me tell you this story that I have found somehow interesting. You might want to know. And then sitting through like 30 minutes of dialogue. You know, it's not the same. Anyway,
No,
I think I interrupted you again.
no, that's pretty much it. I really didn't have much else to say.
Okay. Okay. Well, I will present my thoughts then right now if it's okay.
Okay.
Um my least favorite chapter in this story is chapter 3. Only because of the fact that it contains the line Caspian gasped as the whole memory came flooding back, and that is half the chapter. I absolutely hate it when writers do that, where they just like, and the memory came back to him, and let me explain to you this memory in detail so I can fill in the missing context that I need to relate the title to this story somehow. So here we go, you know. It's just it feels like an afterthought. You know, it feels like this entire story was named after an afterthought in chapter 3. You know? It's
Right.
not something central to the plot. It's not named after something that's like it cuz like think about it. This little rhyme, even though it's created very well and I have to give props to them for making it because I know how hard it is to make things that rhyme. Like it's created well, but it's useless. It's absolutely useless because who else uses it? Because this is the end of the story. There is no mention of this rhyme in the movies. This does not explain a rhyme you see in the movies. This does not explain anything that happened in the first and second chapters. It is literally just there because he wanted to make poetry in the middle of this story, or at the end of the story, not even the middle. Right? Because no one, it's not used. It's never used. And who
No,
cares?
it's
Who
not.
cares
It's
about
never
Caspian,
used,
right?
and I think right. And I think that's the problem. I think that because it doesn't spend any time for us to really get to know any of these people, because we're just made to assume, like, okay, yeah, we know who these people are. Like, there isn't a lot that the story can work with because it is such a one-shot story. And so I think that that opens a wider discussion on, what the difference between a one-shot story will be and like the difference between like a OC or like an original creation. Because I think that that even has its own elements of like plot intrigue and like just different elements that are not present in a lot of one-shot stories because they're just one-shot stories. If that makes sense.
I am gonna keep going off of Burn Like Cold Iron and say that like first off, this story, the main difference between this story and Burn Like Cold Iron is in Burn Like Cold Iron you saw other aspects of these characters that you would never know just by watching the movies. Like
I feel like Burn Like Cold Iron introduced its own kind of thing because it was kind of like the real world meets like I
Yeah.
was gonna say Narnia. The real world meets Lord of the Rings,
And
right?
and
So
even
like,
no, the thing is, like, think about how Boromir was portrayed. Even though I keep wailing on how Boromir was portrayed and like how sappy he is, uh, he
wasn't he like a daddy?
yeah, it's kind of a weird daddy fetish in that whole story. But anyway, he writes, right. He writes like little things, little letters back to his family, and you don't ever see that in the movie, right? You don't never know that he
Right.
does that, and that brings a whole new side of him. And even if it's a sappy,
Mhm.
stupid side that I really don't appreciate at all, it brings a new side
No,
to him, which you can kind of
I get that.
appreciate because it's like, hey, she's reworking these characters and therefore introducing some uniqueness into her characters. Here, it's
Mhm.
just, yes, you know who Peter, Edmund, Lucy, and Susan are, and let me just tell you a little bit more about them. And I'm not going to change them a bit. I'm just going to give you a little bit of exposition through dialogue. And that is the worst. That is actually the worst. So, like, because it's actually just copying and pasting, like, characters at this point.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. Like, I don't want you to feel like I don't get it because I totally do. It's difficult, right? It's very difficult to kind of tell this story or to even like talk about the story because it's like what can we talk about? You know?
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing, no sides you can play off of. It's all just already explained by the movies because C.S. Lewis, surprise, surprise, actually did a good job of fleshing out his characters and making them
I mean,
complete.
he made them, so I would hope so.
So, if you want something that's unique and fun to read, you kind of have to innovate because these things are already basically complete. So there's not
Sure.
much to add to them, you know? Do you know what I'm
Yep.
so like in order to make the story successful, you have to add sides to play off of to these characters, things that we did not
You
know
do.
about them, and we can discover about them.
Yep.
Yeah.
I got what you mean. So where are we now? Like what are our closing thoughts? Are there anything else that you really kind of want to add here?
Yeah, I do. I have so much that I want to add. And we do not have time for all the like shit talking I want to do on this story. But uh, so let's take Amarian. And you remember her very well, I assume, because I
You
cannot.
love you and Marion.
I love Amarian as a character because she's so awesome. Because what she does is not just put innovate on a character, a singular character like Boromir innovated on Boromir.
Yeah.
She innovated on an entire species, the elf species. Because
Right.
in the movie, you only ever see elves that are like super like high up and like sniffing their own farts and just like you know what I'm talking about, right? Like very like high up and above everyone else and like very aloof. Um, but Amarian shows that they are also living beings and they have like feelings and they can do wrong things and they can, they think that other elves are hot and like it's kind of like, hey, these people have actual feeling to them, and now you get to understand how the elves actually are as a whole species. And in that
Yeah.
sense, one character revolutionized a species versus this story, no character revolutionizes anything. They just don't do anything. The entire, you know what I'm talking about? You see like the difference here
Yeah.
in the depth that these characters are able to create versus the depth in Cold
Mhm.
Iron.
Right. I
Yeah.
definitely see what you mean. I think for me it's a little difficult because I think again we're kind of almost comparing apples to oranges, you know?
No, they're both put on the same website, Brendan. They are both complete
No, but I
stories.
mean the types of stories
No,
that they
there's no
are.
type of story. There is good stories and there are bad stories. And good stories can be in different lengths. And this could have been a good short story. And it wasn't. It was just a lot of nothing. It was a scene. Gosh darn it. I
That's
feel
fair.
very
That's
strongly
fair.
on this topic. I don't know why.
That's fair. I think that you make a good point. I definitely think that there is a difference. And so I think for me it's just kind of figuring out, I guess, how we want to like evaluate these stories,
Well, okay, I
or
want to ask
evaluate these.
what are the types of stories then? Because you said there are different types of stories. So what type is the
Well,
story?
I think that there's definitely different types of fan fiction, right? Like I think as I talked about, like that story that we read was like an AU, right? So it was more of an alternative universe. It was the same universe that, you know, the characters and stuff like that. Like we know the names, we know Marion, we know Boromir, all those type of things. But as you pointed out, like the author herself changed parts of the story to kind of fit like the new reality that she wanted to create. So that would be kind of what I would call an alternative universe.
No,
I would also say
that's what
that
I would call a good fan fiction because it makes something unique out of something that we already know.
I would say that that this story would be kind of a take on the original canon, right? So
Yeah,
it's
but
just
that's
kind
just
of
plagiarism, Brandon.
it's not
That's just
plagiarism though, because
copyright
it's a
infringement.
single it's a single one shot story that's using the canon to kind of exposit about a piece of, I guess, the story that they feel has a problem and that they just want to exposit more of.
No, that's
Does that
different
make sense?
type of story. That's not different. They're all like stories. There's no different types of like fan fiction. They're all supposed to be stories. They're all supposed to present their complete thought. They're not supposed to be scenes. If you publish it as a scene, you have to label it in the title as a scene or label it in the description as only, incomplete or something like that.
Right.
You don't blue ball people like this by publishing not like incomplete like works or works that are just scenes as stories and then having them read it and always looking for like the big punchline or the big ending to it or the big meaning and never finding it. That's evil. Why would you do that to me? How could you do that to me?
To you,
Yeah, me in particular. Um, but like, it doesn't. I don't know. So the way I think about it, I know we have very different views on this topic. But a one-shot story, as you're saying, like something that just exposits on an existing canon, should also have uniqueness to it, and also have a complete meaning to it, and also have plot to it. You can make a prologue a complete story, and that's been done many times in movies where there's a prequel, like released. Um,
okay.
Sometimes, very very few times, the prequel is better than the actual movie. And see, that's because they innovate on an existing canon. And even if they're doing exposition, they do it in a way that they present a totally different thought, a totally different theme. Like, think
Mhm.
about The Lord of the Rings again. I know I like talking about The Lord of the Rings, and it might get annoying to some listeners, but the Lord of the Rings 3, right? There's 3 books. And then he wrote The Hobbit, right? And
Yeah.
nowadays you have a lot of people arguing about whether The Hobbit was better than Lord of the Rings. And that is a good argument to be having. That means the dude wrote the prequel very, very well. And that story still uses the same characters, still does exposition. The entire point of that story is exposition. And yet it's a complete story. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. So that's my thought on how there's only one type of story, and that is a good story or a bad story. And the good stories are the ones that actually present an idea and a plot, and the bad ones are the ones that are just scenes, that are just meant to crush your hopes and dreams. It's different.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean,
I'm
is there
sure we can
anything
come
else
to an
that you
agreement
would?
here, but like we
Yeah.
could be arguing about this until like 3 hours in. Um,
But
but
is there anything else that you would like to kind of say for us to kind of close out here?
I mean, I guess I can. From this story, there's a lot of stuff you can glean, especially if you're a new
Okay.
writer. Again, me and Brandon have no authority on lecturing new writers because we both do not
Hmm.
write very often, if at all these days. Uh, but I think there are some important points that we made and that hopefully you picked up on about plot structure and not
Right.
overusing dialogue and abusing exposition that a lot of people can take to heart here. Like just don't end your story by saying the whole memory came flooding back. Like, don't end your story on a stupid memory. End it on something meaningful, something that relates to the central plot, which in this story I'm not even sure exists. So, make a central plot. Have a central plot. Have something happening, and have the ending to that something be meaningful and be the central theme. And then B, don't end that central plot on a flashback. And don't have the majority of that central plot be a flashback. Just don't touch flashbacks unless you absolutely have to. You know? Because it's just a cheap way of getting out of basically showing people that you're a bad writer because you don't know what your characters are doing. Or you haven't fleshed out your characters very well. Or you're not very good at fleshing out characters.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that,
The
there's definitely
over-reliance on
I think that
flashback.
there is... Right. I think, we can talk about that as well. Like the over-reliance on flashbacks and just how difficult I think that can be. Right?
It's so easy to fall into it.
Right.
It's so easy just to write flashback because you can just write as much exposition as you want, and you can write as much pretty descriptions as you want, but in the end, nothing happens because you end up at the same time point, and nothing has happened so far.
I agree.
It's like Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, do I have anything else to add? I will add that I'm quite disappointed, because I thought I was getting a good story, and I just got a scene, and not even a story. So, I don't know. Kind of disappointed in this whole thing. I'm glad that I was able to talk through it with you, Brandon, and got to see what you thought about it.
Right. And I like that we have differing views on this as well.
Yeah, it makes it more interesting, doesn't it?
It does.
I want to hear what worked in the story for you. You know, because you said you thought of it in a higher light than me, so I want to know.
I think for me, what worked in this story was really just how the dialogue was portrayed. Like I did kind of feel like even if there was a lot of dialogue, I still felt like I could see okay, this is Caspian that's speaking. This is Lucy that's speaking. Because I think it matches what their personality is based off what I know from the original story. The issue that I think it has is that for a new reader, it's kind of difficult to just jump right into this one because you do have to have that background knowledge. And I think if you're not as familiar or as cultured with those characters, it's going to be a little bit difficult for you to just kind of understand, okay, so why is this person speaking like this? Or why are their motivations like this? Even if it didn't touch upon those things, I think those are a lot of things that could be inferred if you do have that prior knowledge. So I think for me, doing a little bit of having prior knowledge and then doing a little bit of research beforehand, I was able to kind of seamlessly adapt myself into the story. I still felt like it was a struggle to understand at times. And I feel like the flashbacks kind of took me out. But overall, I don't think it was a terrible story. It's definitely not anything that I can compare to Burn Like Cold Iron because I think it's just a different way of telling a story or a fan fiction. And I think that honestly does a better job of doing this. I think that we can both agree on that.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's still a solid piece of work. I don't want to shit on the writer. I mean, especially since this came out 13 years ago.
No, notice how I never shit on the writer. I only shit on the work. And that's fine. I'm fine if people shit on my work as well. Just don't shit on me. Please.
Right.
I'll cry.
Yeah. So that's about it for me.
Okay. Well, I guess, let me see here. We are coming up on the 1 hour mark. We are 5 minutes away. Do you want to do you have any announcements you want to make concerning art, or anything else like that?
I love that you call me out like that.
Well, I mean, we have been using these terribly drawn MS Paint backgrounds for quite a long time. Actually, this episode was created in the 2 minutes before this episode. So it's not the greatest.
I would not say that I have any developments or any announcements in regarding art. I think that an announcement that I can give is to just be patient with us. I think that like we both have very busy
It's just us
schedules
talking
and
to each
very
other, except we're talking to the readers.
yeah, basically. We both have very busy schedules, and it's just kind of hard to I think even find time to find a story, read it, and then discuss it, right? So I think just having a little bit of sympathy, a little bit of forgiveness, and we'll try to get the episodes out as soon as possible.
Yeah, actually, that is
But yeah,
something I have to apologize
that's
for as
pretty much
well.
it.
Just the
Yeah.
rate of episodes is just very low these days.
Hmm.
I guess I can share that I'm in aerospace, so I have a lot of work to do,
Hmm.
like all the time, every day. Um, and I'm sure Brandon, as doing what he does, he also has a lot of stuff to do, right? What are
Yep.
you econ, right? Business econ, um,
No,
law.
no, public health.
Oh, public health. Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so both very
So yeah.
demanding. And we apologize to the one
Hmm.
person that consistently watches our videos. Um, uh, it might be actually that alt account might just be me checking the quality of the videos. um, but you know, we'll try and get them out sooner. We'll try and get them out sooner. Maybe like once every 3 weeks or 2 weeks. We'll come
Hmm.
out with a reading or a discussion. And I mean, I think that's about it. Oh, maybe some updates to the way we record these might be coming. I was thinking of just because this OBS records at a certain frame rate at a certain resolution, and it's
Hmm.
really hard to scale that through editing software. So I was thinking if we could just maybe try an episode where we do only audio, we record only our
Okay.
audio, and then
Yeah.
basically I don't use OBS. I record my voice, and then over at your end you record your voice, and then
Okay.
after the episode you email or Discord or send me the file of your recording,
Hmm.
and then I can slap them together, sync them, and then we can
Okay.
do some sort of syncing signal before we start, like a clap or a snap or something, or
Hmm.
like a catchphrase. Um, anyway, like so that way it makes the scalability of these episodes a lot easier and a lot easier to work with. Because you can
Got
just
it.
slap the two audio files on top of each other, and the audio quality will be better, and you don't have to worry about frame rate issues. Um,
Okay.
so that might be a change that might happen or might not. It's depending on whether I have enough time or not. I still haven't I still haven't edited that one episode we did, where we just talked about random stuff, and
Oh, the news episode? Oh,
yeah.
that's gonna be so outdated.
Well, yeah, it is gonna be outdated, but it's just I mean, it's just our thoughts on stuff.
True.
So
True.
it's not like we're the ones telling you the news. We're just reacting to the news.
Hmm.
So it should be okay. I mean, yeah, it's old now, old news, but um, in fact, just a week after we did that, the whole Astro World thing happened, and I kind of want to talk about that,
That's
but
true. Yeah.
there's no
I think
time
we
for
need
that.
to do. I think what we need to do is. I think that probably the next episode we'll be talking about some new developments in the news because even the Britney Spears case got resolved. I
Oh,
think
yeah,
something.
that's right. We should do that.
Yes. So
More
I think we
episodes for
should talk about
everyone.
news. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should do another news episode, and then we can probably hop in with a story, which would also give us enough time to find some things out. So
You
yeah.
know what would be
Well,
really
stay
funny?
tuned.
The only like I was thinking maybe I could hire an editor to do this because I literally have no time. And I have no video editing skills. I'm pretty sure the only person I know who's good at art and video editing and stuff is Josephine Wen. And
Mhm.
I'm not very like I don't say that name like lightly. It's kind of like saying Voldemort
Yeah.
in Harry Potter. But it's an option. I could look around, but that is the easiest way I could
Yeah.
get some art done. I know she does
Hmm.
commissions. So
Right.
anyway, you guys
We'll talk
probably
about
don't
that.
know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
but that can be
We'll
an
talk about
inside
it.
thing between me and Brandon. Anyway, we've been rambling for way too long. We're coming up on the hour mark. This has been episode 12 of The Pen is Mightier, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. And just, yeah, we'll see you next time. Have a good, 2 or 3 weeks. Bye, everyone.
Bye, y'all. Bye.